You're gardening. Hand disappears into the bushes. Fingers brush something cold and curved. You yank back before your brain even finishes the sentence. That might be a snake. Now picture that same moment, but you're not wearing gloves. You're wearing animal skin. No fence, no gloves, no walls, just forest and things that can kill you. No streetlights, no phone flashlight, just shifting shadows and a floor you can't fully see. Every rustle could be wind, or it could be something venomous and coiled. If your palms just got sweaty, welcome to ancient logic, your worst instincts explained. So why does your body react before your eyes even confirm what it's looking at? The answer explains why some fears never fully go away, no matter what. Most people assume fear of snakes and spiders comes purely from movies and stories. Scary thumbnails, dramatic music, a parent screaming once in a backyard, case closed, right? Except infants who have never seen a horror movie react the exact same way. Something older is running underneath the surface, something written into the body itself, something that shows up long before a single scary movie ever gets watched. Long before storybooks, long before cartoons, long before anyone taught a lesson about danger. To understand it, go back to a world without gloves, fences, or flashlights. A world where the forest floor was not relaxing, it was an active minefield. Camouflaged, silent, patient, a single wrong step could end everything in an instant. There was no emergency room, no anti-venom, no phone call for help. Just you, your eyes, and whatever was coiled in the leaves ahead of you. No hospitals meant no second chances. A single misread shape could end a life. And it wasn't just your life on the line either. Groups traveled together, foraged together, slept close together for protection through the night. One missed threat could ripple through an entire camp in seconds. So detection wasn't a personal skill, it was a survival requirement shared by everyone. Slow eyes got left behind, sharp eyes got to keep telling the story. That pressure didn't last a season, it lasted an almost unimaginable stretch of time. Long enough to quietly rewrite how ancient humans processed danger before conscious thought even arrived. Anthropologist Lynn Isbell proposed a theory that explains exactly how ancient eyesight got so sharp. For an immense stretch of history, snakes were a constant, relentless threat everywhere. Not occasional danger, constant danger, every single day, in every patch of undergrowth. To survive that pressure, ancient humans needed sharper depth perception and better color vision. They needed eyes that could break camouflage before danger got close enough to strike. Groups living in regions thick with venomous snakes developed noticeably sharper visual detection systems. Groups in places snakes reached later, like Madagascar, simply didn't need that same edge. Translation: your eyes today are still running that exact same ancient detection software. Nobody installed an update, the original version still works just fine. That's why a coiled garden hose makes you flinch before logic even gets involved. You're not overreacting, you're running a threat scan built for survival. But sharper eyesight is only half of this story. There's a second theory, one about how fast this kind of fear actually forms. Researcher Martin Seligman called it biological preparedness, and it's a strange kind of shortcut. Basically, humans are pre-wired to learn certain dangers faster than others. It takes far fewer bad encounters to develop a lasting fear of one. Compare that to modern dangers like guns, cars, or electrical outlets. Those take repeated, direct, often painful experience before real fear locks in. Ancient threats skip that process, they get flagged instantly, sometimes after just one scare. And once that fear forms, it's incredibly stubborn, far harder to unlearn than newer fears. Translation: one bad run-in with a spider as a kid still haunts you decades later. Meanwhile, you can drive a car every single day and feel almost nothing. Ancient threats get a permanent file, modern threats barely get a sticky note. But here's the part that gets stranger, and honestly, a little unsettling. This reaction doesn't start in the thinking part of your brain at all. It starts somewhere faster, somewhere older, somewhere that skips conscious thought entirely. Deep in the brain sits a region called the pulvinar, tucked inside the thalamus. Researchers studying macaques found something remarkable hiding inside this tiny structure. A structure most people never think about, quietly running threat detection in the background. 40% of neurons in that region respond specifically and instantly to snake-shaped images. Faster than faces, faster than neutral shapes, faster than almost anything else tested. And these neurons aren't reacting to just anything. They're locked onto specific shapes. The brain is tuned to notice curvilinear lines, the exact curve of a snake's body. It's also tuned to radial symmetry, legs spreading outward from a central point. That's a spider's silhouette, flagged instantly, without a single conscious thought involved. 2 ancient danger patterns, permanently loaded into the brain's fastest recognition system. No app store required. This update shipped with the original hardware. There's even a subcortical shortcut, a private expressway straight to the brain's fear center. Visual information about snakes reaches the amygdala before your conscious mind processes the image. That's why you're already stepping backward before you've even registered what you saw. Translation. That jolt from the hose isn't panic. It's an ancient alarm doing its job. Your body decided you were in danger a full second before your mind caught up. Ancient survival didn't leave room for double-checking. Hesitation could cost an entire life. So the fastest possible reaction got prioritized over the most accurate one. Which brings up an obvious question: are we born this way or taught this way? Researchers at the Max Planck Institute set out to answer that exact question in 2017. They studied 6-month-old infants, babies with 0 prior experience around real animals. The babies were shown pictures of snakes and spiders next to neutral images like flowers. Some images showed fish, others showed snakes, spiders, and flowers, side by side. Researchers weren't watching for crying or screaming, babies that young rarely do either. Instead, they tracked something the babies couldn't fake or control: their pupils. No screaming parent, no scary movie, no cultural influence of any kind involved. When the snake and spider images appeared, the infant's pupils dilated significantly. Pupil dilation is a textbook physiological sign of stress and heightened arousal. The flowers and fish got nothing, just calm, uninterested baby eyes. The full-blown phobia usually still needs a trigger, like a parent's reaction later on. But the raw stress response was already sitting there, fully installed at 6 months old. Translation: your child recoiling from a spider photo is ancient wiring switching on. You didn't teach your kid to fear spiders, you just watched old programming activate. And this pattern doesn't stop with humans, it shows up across the animal world too. Wild vervet monkeys can detect a snake through dense foliage almost instantly. Researchers found they can spot one with just 2.7 centimeters of skin visible. Not the whole snake, not most of the snake, barely a sliver of it. Most of us would walk right past that patch of leaves without a second glance. Vervet eyes don't get that luxury. Missing it could cost a member of the group. Vervets even have a specific alarm call reserved only for snake threats. It's different from their leopard call, different from their eagle call entirely. When that particular alarm sounds, the group rises onto 2 legs to scan the ground. A dedicated response for a dedicated threat, refined by generations of close calls. Not guesswork, not luck, a finely tuned system built through repeated life-or-death encounters. Translation: that specific dread you feel scrolling into a spider thumbnail without warning, that's not random. That's a specialized alert system reacting exactly how it was built. Different animals entirely, same underlying strategy, wired for the exact same ancient threat. Now here's where snakes and spiders actually start to split apart a little. Snakes are treated as a near-universal threat across nearly every group studied. The detection response for snakes shows up consistently, strong and specialized almost everywhere. Spiders are a bit more complicated, and researchers are still debating the details. Some argue spider fear leans more toward disgust, a contamination response instead of danger. Groups without human involvement show a much weaker built-in detection edge for spiders. That suggests spiders may have become a serious threat later than snakes did. Snakes had a much longer run at shaping ancient threat detection, generation after generation. Spiders joined the danger list more recently, and the wiring shows it. Still strong, still automatic, just built through a slightly different survival pathway. Both fears earned their place the hard way, through generations of close calls. 2 different fears, 2 slightly different origin stories, both still running strong today, Here's the question people always ask once they hear all of this. Why aren't we born terrified of cars or guns or electrical outlets instead? Those things kill far more people today than snakes or spiders ever will. The answer comes down to timing and how slowly survival instincts get locked in. Ancient survival pressure from snakes stretched across an enormous, almost unimaginable span of time. Cars, electricity, modern technology, all of that has existed for less than 150 years. That's barely a blink compared to the pressure that shaped ancient threat detection. There simply hasn't been enough time for a built-in car detection alarm to form. Ancient survival pressure needed thousands of generations to lock an instinct in place. Cars have been around for roughly 3 generations, maybe 4 if you're generous. That's nowhere near enough time to build a dedicated alarm system from nothing. So your brain reaches for the oldest tool in the drawer instead. Translation: your brain isn't broken for fearing a spider more than a moving vehicle. It's just running the oldest, most tested alarm system it has available. So where does that leave us, nature or nurture, born or built? Turns out, it's not really one or the other, it's both working together. 2 forces, one very old, one shaped by your own personal life, teaming up. Nature hands you specialized detection wiring and a heightened stress response to certain shapes. That part arrives before you're even old enough to remember arriving. Nurture decides whether that wiring gets activated into a full, lasting phobia later. A calm household might leave that wiring quiet, alert, but never triggered. A single dramatic moment can flip it on for good, sometimes in seconds. 2 people, same ancient wiring, completely different outcomes, depending on what life adds on top. A screaming reaction from someone nearby, a scary story, a single bad encounter. Any of those can flip the switch on wiring that was already sitting there. You weren't born afraid, not exactly. That's not quite the right word for it. You were born as an expert, a lifelong specialist in spotting exactly these shapes. Curved lines, radial patterns, 8 legs extending from a center, your brain flags it instantly. Not because you're weak, not because you're irrational, because you're incredibly well trained. Trained by people who never got a second chance to be wrong about it. Every flinch, every dilated pupil, every jump at a garden hose carries that history. It's not fear malfunctioning, it's memory, dressed up as instinct, still doing its job. You're not overreacting to a spider on the wall, you're honoring an ancient survival record. That's the story behind the jump, the flinch, the racing heart you can't explain. If this made you look at your own reactions a little differently, hit subscribe. Ancient Logic breaks down more of these moments every single week, so stick around.